welcome back. And today I want to continue talking as a follow-up video about custom in-ears. Custom in-ears are becoming more and more common. Everybody's using them on stage. Even in studios, people use them for just to monitor yourself. And if you're like a front of a house engineer or you're a monitor engineer, you would also be using custom in-ears, so that way you make sure that you can listen to the mixes and stuff like that as you're passing it to singers and musicians. The tricky thing about custom in-ears is just you can't try them before you buy them. That's like spending $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 and saying, it is what you get and I can't really test it. I don't even know what it sounds like. It's so hard because once they're made just for your ears. So I can't go to one of my friends and says, hey, can I try yours please? Can I try this in-ear or can I try that one? You can obviously listen to the universal version of them, but they sound so different when they are custom than universal because they're made into the shape of your ear canal. You have no bleed of audio coming in and out. The low end response is significantly different when you are using custom. So I want to share today with you my experience with custom in-ears, and I hope that is helpful for you guys, especially if you're in the process of trying to buy one or making a decision of buying one. I had the privilege of owning 4 sets of custom in-ears over the last 15 plus years. I have 3 of them with me here, and then the 4th one I don't have right now. I don't have it anymore. It's gone. So I kind of want to talk about just basic things about custom in-ears that we should be familiar with. The difference between when you get like an Apple AirPod, basically it's called a dynamic driver, which is a one driver inside those ears or inside those AirPods, and they're designed to handle high frequency, low frequency, mid frequencies, high mids and low mids. Everything is being processed through one driver. Once you step into professional music and into professional in-ear monitoring, a lot of these companies, and you'll notice that on the description on their website, they say this is a 3 driver, this is a 6 driver, this is a 12 driver, this is an 18 driver, whatever. And the idea is when I have some low frequency passing, they will pass through the dedicated low frequency drivers, and then one's passed dedicated to the mid drivers and one dedicated to the high drivers. So one, you don't stress those drivers significantly, but then also 2, you get a lot more clarity out of those drivers because they're not being overworked and trying to process a lot of information. Think of it this way: if you had like some really CPU heavy session and then you had the advantage of saying, I want to break down that CPU heavy session into 3 computers versus 1 computer to process that information, and that makes sure you don't have any glitches or overloads or CPU spikes or something like that. So this is kind of in the same idea. Okay, so let's talk through these pros and cons for each one, what I like about them and what I don't like about them. My first set of ears, I'm gonna talk from the oldest to the newest. So these are my 64 audio. Back then when I bought these, the company was called 1964, and then they rebranded several years ago to 64 audio. And this set, it was called V6 Stage. As you guys can see it here. So the V6 Stage in-ears, basically it was their flagship back then for if you're a stage musician and you want that hype, you want that really hyped audio where I got a lot of low end, I got a lot of high end, and then it's like that V, scooped V, basically, where you have your mids are a little bit back behind, and then you have more of a boost on the low end and then a boost on the high end. And the idea is just get you that full big sound on the stage. I owned these back in the day. I absolutely loved them. I went with the blackout and I went with the smoke interior, which I regretted later on. I should have went with the clear because then you can actually see inside. So back then when they designed these, they actually had 3 separate canals inside the unit, and then each canal goes to 2 of the drivers. So each 2 driver, so we have low has one canal, mid has one canal, and then high has one canal, and then that's it. There was no ambient port. There was no any of their newer technology, the TIA technology or the technology that helps to relieve the pressure out of your ears. This was just really, really old school. I used these for several years, and then eventually, somehow they got so dull and dim to the point that I would have to crank my highs to actually get any high end out of them. And I think just the drivers were just kind of dying. But then 64 Audio said, we don't service these anymore. So you just buy new ones, basically, or send them back and we'll give you a discount for a new one. These ones had the 2-pin cable, which has pros and cons. The pro about it is that it holds in really tight, but it's so hard to get it in and out. And I always worry about those little 2 pins that they will end up breaking as I'm trying to replace a cable or pull that cable in and out. I don't use these anymore. Matter of fact, I even reach out to Universal Audio, say, is there any way to like fix them, service them, upgrade them? They said no, and they just said, you can just order a new one and we'll give you some extra discount. And that's what they did, and their customer service is absolutely amazing, so I don't have any problem with that at all. Then my second set that I got, I don't know, maybe like 7-8 years ago, I ended up I wanted to try a different company, so I went with Ultimate Ears. And then Ultimate Ears has so many different ones. The one that I got is called Reference Remastered. And the idea behind it, and that's how they marketed it, they said, those ones are not hyped. It doesn't have that V-shaped thing that my V6 stage had. They have only 3 drivers versus I came from 6 drivers on my V6 stage. So this one has only 3 drivers, one for low, one for mid, one for highs. But those drivers are being tuned by Capitol Records to make sure that they are flat. So it's the idea of having studio monitors, flat studio monitors in your ear. And I got these because, well, yes, I played on the stage about 15 hours a week or something like that, 20 hours a week, maybe actually a little bit more. But I also worked in the studio mixing for 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And then sometimes I'll be on the road and I wanna do some edits or do some mix tweaks on my laptop really quick, but then I obviously don't trust my V6 stage. Back then, my V6 was already kind of dying. I don't trust like normal headphones or whatever because they're just not accurate enough. So these were, the goal behind them is to be super accurate. These drivers are all tuned where it translates everything exactly as is. So let me tell you guys something here that is a little tricky, because we get excited when, oh, this has a 12 driver versus this has a 2 driver or 3 driver. And you'll notice on a lot of the websites for a lot of the companies, the more drivers the in-ear has, obviously the more expensive, because it requires more work and more wiring and more pieces and technology in it. But when you're comparing one company to another company, do not only take into consideration how many drivers it has. This is really tricky because it would be, well, sure, this has a 6 driver and this has a 3 driver. But also another really important clue here is that what is the quality of that driver? And then how does that driver work? What is the technology involved in that driver? How accurate that driver is? I was shocked going to the 3 driver. I thought it would be a big downgrade going to the 6 driver, but the 3 driver sounded significantly better than my old 6 driver. These 3 drivers were a lot more transient, they were cleaner. One thing I would say though, because it was more accurate, I didn't have that big subby low end that I was hoping to get when I'm on the stage. Sure, it works great in the studio because the low end was super clean and I didn't have any of the hype in the low end. And I actually have used it multiple times where I would make mix references, do some tweaks and stuff like that. And then when I come back to the studio, I would reference, okay, was that too far or too exaggerated, but I was actually surprised that it was closer to what I would have done in my studio. Obviously not exactly the same because I have really nice speakers in my studio, but it was close enough that it is not like I messed up the low end significantly or messed up the high end significantly. I've used these for years, and then the last year and a half, I'm kind of starting to have the same problem where they're just getting darker and they're getting duller. But then I also started having the problem of not having enough low end, which was a big problem for me, especially playing on stage. And then we have all big concert, and then I just don't hear the low end. I'm not feeling it. I want to feel like those subs are on and then like shakes my body. I just don't get any of that. With Ultimate Ears, the way that I ordered mine, they had an option for ambient port. You guys see the port right here. And then that port has like a rubber plug that you put in to plug the port, so then it's closed. And then if you want to open the port, you just remove the plug, and it has its own separate canal that goes all the way down to your ears. I was having really high hopes about this because if I'm on the stage, I can have a little bit of the stage noise into my ears. But here's what I found out. Whenever I opened the port, I lost significant amount of low end, and I didn't even have enough low end in these to afford losing more. So that was a huge problem. The second is the way that they designed this rubber piece. When you press it in and close that port, it is so hard to get it out. So it became like a nightmare. Like even with my fingernails right now, I can't pull it out. It is so hard. It's like, well, this is a really bad design flaw because now I can't open and close that port easily. And I found myself keeping that port closed at all times because I lose a lot of low end and it's hard to put it in and out. One design advantage that I liked in here, that instead of having 3 little canals from the beginning of the ear tip all the way to my drivers, which was really hard to clean each one individually, and if you get some wax in it, it would block it. This one had like one big opening for a little bit, and then after that, it separates into 3 canals on the inside, which the idea behind it is that one big opening, that's mostly where your wax will accumulate, so it'll be easier to clean because it's a bigger opening. And then after that, you have the 3 individual canals, one to each driver. The idea was great. It was obviously a lot easier to clean, but what I noticed is that sometimes the wax made it to those individual canals, and then now they're so much harder to clean because those canals are all the way inside. So that's one of the design flaws that I didn't like. One of the things I absolutely loved about Ultimate Ears is the quality of their cables. This cable that came with my unit was absolutely amazing. I would say hands down the best quality cable. It was super flexible. It's the clear one. I got the 64-inch one. It just worked so well. And then this one was not the 2-pin cable. This is their newer technology here. As you guys can see, it's easy to put in and it's easy to come out. I never had the cable disconnect while I'm on the stage, and then it just worked really well. Didn't have any problems with it at all. Also, Ultimate Ears offered something really cool that a lot of other companies did not offer. They offered a Bluetooth unit, a Bluetooth cable basically, that you can plug to your in-ears, and now you turn your in-ears into normal Bluetooth headphones. And the idea is if you spend $1,000 on this, then you want to use it also for Bluetooth listening because it's a way higher quality headphones than your Apple AirPods or something else. That Bluetooth cable, I've used it. It has its own app on the phone that you can adjust EQ and stuff like that. And it lasts for like 4 or 5 hours. And it has the extra battery piece that you can basically plug into the back of the cable right here. And then it would give it more hours of operation. I liked it a lot. I've used it quite a bit when I'm working out at the gym or when I'm traveling. My only thing about it though, the power that this gave to the in-ears were actually really low. So I would be, especially if you're in a loud environment or on a plane and you have that really loud noise on the flight, or you're just at a gym and it's super loud at the gym, you can't really push those in-ears loud enough. Like even at the loudest volume, they were actually significantly quieter than my Apple AirPods Pro, which was a disappointment because now these in-ears are being super quiet compared to other headphones like a Bose headphone or a Sony or any of these. And I believe it's just the power that came from this cable did not power the in-ears enough to actually push it with enough headroom so you can have just really loud volume. And then just in the last couple years, like I said, I started to get those became really dull and dim. I didn't really like how they sounded on stage anymore, and I was losing a lot of my low end specifically, and I can't really feel it. And being a music director on stage, I need to know what is everybody doing, and I need to know what the bass drum did, and I need to be able to direct and help the band to do what they're supposed to do, but I just barely have any bass in my ears. And I started to make some decision based on what I'm hearing and asking the bass guitar to boost more low ends on his side, or the drums to boost some low end on the kick drum in our ears. And then it was not accurate decisions anymore because I didn't have enough low end coming in my ears. Also, the highs on it were starting to get dull as well, similar to what happened to my old 64 V6 stage. And then just recently, in the last few months, I got, which is, you guys have seen the video I did a whole separate video just on unboxing these and using them. And these are the A18s, which has 18 drivers in it. Yes, you heard me right, 18 drivers. That's insane. Just looking on the inside of this unit and all the cabling and the wiring, it is packed. It's crazy how they were able to fit 18 drivers here in this unit. A few things I like about this is that, so the cable is similar to the Ultimate Ears cable, where it's that newer technology. You can pop it in and out. Matter of fact, I can actually swap cables between my Ultimate Ears and this one. They will be compatible and they would work together. I would say the cable quality of the Ultimate Ears is actually higher quality than this one, but now I basically have a spare cable that I can use for both. I was able to even use the Bluetooth cable from Ultimate Ears with this unit, and it worked fine. It was still the same problem that the headroom wasn't high enough, that it's just not loud, it's pretty quiet. So it's the same issue. One of the things that they've changed on their design, so they followed the same principle as Ultimate Ears, where they have one hole, one big hole, and then out of that one hole, you have the canals, and then the canals go to the individual drivers. Not every group of drivers have one canal, but the one thing that they've added here that was not in the Ultimate Ear, they ended up adding like a mesh, like it looks like a window screen-ish. And they put it at the bottom of that one opening, and then you have the individual canals. And the idea, or the goal behind it, that you get your earwax in that one big opening, and that's when you need to clean. But then even if somehow you get too much wax and start or try to be shoved in down those individual canals, which has happened with my other in-ears, now it won't happen because that mesh holds the wax in that one big chamber, and then it's so much easier to clean, and you don't have to stick anything down to the individual canals that goes to the drivers, and you don't have to risk messing up anything or breaking anything. So that was a really, really good idea from 64 Audio. Absolutely love that. Also, now they added the newer technology for these, where basically you have these ports. So again, a similar idea to what Ultimate Ears have done, but these are slightly different. Now these ports, I have all these different ones. It can dampen only 15 decibels from the room noise into your ears. So it allows some, or I can block 20 decibels or 24 decibels. And the idea is I can allow some more of the room bleed into my ears, so I can hear the stage, I can hear the crowd. If you're a singer and you wanna be able to still capture some of the room noise, or a drummer and you wanna capture some of your live drum kit, plus the mix that you're getting into your ears, now you can easily do this. And these are really easy to pull out. So they're not rubber, they're actually metal. some form of a metal, I'm not sure what it is. And then you can easily, it has a place in it where you can tuck in your fingernail underneath and you can pull it out and then swap it with a different one, and then you can put it back in. And now I can also adjust how much ambient noise is coming into my ears versus with my Ultimate ears, it was just on or off. And I've noticed with these that I did not lose a lot of low end. I don't know if that's because these have insane amount of low end already, or because there's just technology in it, it maintains the EQ curve of the in-ears without messing with it. These basically are slightly similar to what my very old V6 stage in terms of EQ curve. It has that V shape where you have a boost in the lows and a boost in the highs. I can definitely tell, like the best way to explain it would be if you're sitting in the front of the house and you have the drum sound check and the drummer is playing, and then you have the kick drum or the outside kick for your sub kick, as well as the subs in the room are turned off. Those would be my old Ultimate ears. And then when I put these on, because I went on the stage having both and I went back and forth and tried them, then having these, it was almost like somebody turned the subwoofer on and somebody turned the front of a house speakers on, where like suddenly I can actually hear all that low end. So that's incredible. Like there's so much low end in this that you can feel the sub. Okay, that's amazing, but it's also a curse, because if your low end is not clean, that's a problem. And that's what I've ran into with them. I felt like the low end was a little bit too much. Like, if I'm in a studio and I'm gonna listen to a mix, or I'm gonna listen to a song that is already mixed and mastered on my iPhone or my laptop through Apple Music or Spotify, sure. But if I'm on the stage, this is not like a studio mix. So I'm still getting, the bass is not super clean, and obviously it comes down to what front of a house engineer you have and what broadcast engineer you have and what monitor engineer you have, but it also comes down to the source. Like the bass guitar, the bass that he's using is not a really nice bass, and he's using some pedals or an amp that is not super clean one, as well as the kick drum. So I ended up with that a little muddy low end more than I would like. And then it put me into more work trying to clean the low end in our mix in our ears, which is a blessing and a curse, but that's just something to keep in mind as you're using these, that the low end is significantly hot. It's like having a lot of subs in your room. So if your low end is not clean, I probably wouldn't recommend those unless you have a way to clean your low end, because it will annoy you. And not having a clean low end in your mix, it just muddies everything else. Quality of build, absolutely amazing. Customer service was absolutely amazing. Now these are become my main one that I use, and then I obviously don't use my other ones anymore. Difference in price, is it worth it? I would say that is gonna come to how picky you are and then how perfectionist you are. If I'm on the stage, the difference in price for me is worth it going to those new 64 audio versus my old Ultimate ears. For studio references, I would say I would not use the A18s for studio reference at all. I actually tried one time. I was at a coffee shop working, and I had to go back and do a couple tweaks for something just in the editing phase, and I noticed like, oh, there's so much low end, there's so much bass. I ended up turning or cleaning a lot of the low end, cleaning a lot of the bass, cleaning a lot of the kick drum and the bass drum, and then I had a synth bass track in there as well. And then when I went back to the studio the next day to finish the editing, I realized, where did my low end go? And that's because how exaggerated the low end were on these, which is designed for your stage use to have that insane amount of low end in your ears. And then when I went back to the studio, it wasn't accurate. So I wouldn't trust these if I'm on the road to make mix edits and mix tweaks. And I know multiple people ask me, okay, what do you use when you're on the road? Especially that now my Ultimate ears ones, they're a little dim on the high end, so I don't trust them either. So I actually now start using open back headphones from Sennheiser. And then I also use the Slate VSX one, which I'll make a separate video about both, pros and cons, what I like about them, just to help you guys being able to just edit, clean your sessions, do some work while you're on the road, or quick mix tweaks or edit tweaks, and you send it back to your client without having to be back in your studio to be able to do this. I hope that really helped you guys in making decision, or just even knowing the difference between those 3 sets of in-ears, of custom in-ears, and what do I like about them and what I don't like about them. And if you like this, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.